Memory techniques can pretty much be used on any type of information, but there is one idea where memory techniques cannot be used. So let's say you memorize a list. So here's your list and you have your different objects on the list. Now you're like, okay, I want to be able to memorize this with all my different lists. And so maybe you have a palace that you're going to store this list in. This is the first time I'm using paint to explain. So you store the list into the palace. But then you're like, wait, I have like all these other things I had to remember in a day. How do I remember those lists and those different tasks? And so maybe you put this palace in a memory palace that has all the different lists that you have. Okay? So this palace is going to have, list 1, list 2, list 3 in each of the different locations. And so this is going to be a palace in itself, a little house. This is going to be a different palace, but they're all going to be stored in this one big palace. All right. So you're like, okay, I have this super palace, right? That has all this information and the locations are going to trigger these other palaces. So what happens is you're like, okay, so what was that list I need to remember? Oh yeah, it was at my friend's house. Okay, this is my friend's house. The list was, oh yeah, it was this, XYZ, right? Okay, so now the question is, how do you remember the palace that has everything in it? And so, of course, you can use a memory technique to store that. Maybe you put that in another palace of some sort because you have all this other information, right? Now, here's the thing. You can't keep doing this cycle of, oh, I need to remember this information too. How do I do that? Let me put it in another palace or use a different technique. It doesn't just have to be a palace. It can be any memory techniques. And so you keep going on this cycle of where, yeah, to help you remember the previous thing, you can put it in a new palace or use another memory technique. But you can't do that forever because there's a point where you have to remember it just with your natural memory. There is no way around it. You can't use a memory technique that's going to help you remember every single thing because that in theory, you need a memory technique to help you remember that memory technique. And so it's an endless loop to think, okay, I always need something to help me remind myself. I need something to remind me of the previous thing over and over and over again. You at the end of the day, at the very bottom is your natural memory. And that's what you have to have confidence in that, hey, yes, I have this list in my house. I have to have confidence that when I wake up, I'm able to say to myself, okay, what do I have to do today? Oh yeah, that list is in my house. You have to have confidence that you're able to do that. That you don't need a memory technique to help you remember, oh yeah, when I wake up, I have to ask myself, where's my list? Because that's going to help trigger, the palace that my list is in. No, you have to have confidence in your natural memory. Your memory that doesn't need any memory techniques. Because you've been using it your whole life. Right now, I am talking to you, right? I am not using any memory techniques to remember the grammatical thing, the structures, the vocabulary I'm saying. No, I'm just, hopefully what I'm saying makes sense and it comes out in the correct way. The same thing is true for your natural memory when it involves memory techniques. You can use all these memory techniques, but at the base, at the very bottom, is your natural memory. And that's what you're going to have to rely on because there are some things that memory techniques cannot help you learn, like, hey, what's my list today? There's not a memory technique for that because you always go think, hey, I'm going to need a memory technique to remember that technique and then that technique. And then you're stuck in this big loop that's never going to end if you want to keep using memory techniques to help you remind you of everything. So hopefully this idea made sense to you because I think it's really important because people kind of fall into this whirlpool of, oh, always using memory techniques all the time. No, your natural memory is the foundation of everything. Memory techniques make everything a lot easier, but at the end of the day, your natural memory is going to help remind you, oh yeah, you stored this in that place. Oh yeah, you're supposed to do this today. What do I have to do specifically? Boom. Then you can use the memory technique to help trigger all the information. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.